You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, y'all? We are back with One Royal Way here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield, Jordan Foote, and Josh Keiser. Joining me as always. Gentlemen, baseball is back. Spring training's in full swing. The World Baseball Classic next week. And at the time of recording, we are 30 days from opening day at Kauffman Stadium. It's a pretty exciting time here, man. Thanks. So glad that you guys are on here with me. We're actually, at the time of recording on the 28th. 1 year ago today, the Royal stuff kicked off at KCSN, and now we're kind of beginning our 2023 season here today, 1 year later. So kind of a cool little moment, and I'm excited for what's to come here.
What'd you get it for our anniversary, Joel? What'd you get me?
This podcast.
That'll do. Love it.
That'll play. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with KCSE. Joel, you want to talk a little bit more about them?
Hey, one of the best places in the area to train if you have a baseball or softball player. Be sure to go check them out. If you know of anybody that wants to get better, and they don't just do baseball, they do a bunch of other sports. I saw a whole thing. They did a promo for golf. They train golfers as well for all that kind of stuff. So anything in the area to train, but specifically for baseball and softball, KC throwing is a really big deal. Eli McFadden, the guy that ran KC throwing for the last couple of years, now works for the Royals. So that just shows you the type of reputation this place has. So be sure to go check them out. And we thank them, as always, for sponsoring this show. So, guys, like I said, spring training's underway. There have been 5 games played so far. There's not a lot to take away from those 5 games. Like, you can take some overarching stuff, but making any sort of hardline opinions and overreactions is just a futile exercise because it's 5 games and you really need a bigger sample to go on baseball. But obviously people are going to have their stupid takes and want to, riot because Daniel Lynch gave up 3 runs in his second inning of work in the spring after punching out 3 in his first. Like, okay, whatever. But with the season playing, we actually have real baseball to watch. What have just been some of your overall thoughts on from what you've seen so far? We'll start with you, Jordan.
I think, man, I don't know when they're going to be losing. That's the main takeaway, is that the Royals dominate the Cactus League, and they always do. They're just good, man, in spring training. And it's one of those things, like I remember, and I know this is a baseball podcast, but the year the Lions went 0-16, I think they were 4-0 that preseason. Everyone was like, oh, the Lions have a deep team. They're going to be really good this year. And then they effing sucked like all year. So it's one of those things where obviously the variance is weird. This is a small sample size. You're getting guys that aren't going to be on the big league team. Like, I'd like to know, and there's probably a study out there somewhere, like the correlation between spring training record and performance versus regular season. There's a lot of factors at play there. But I think, again, it's 5 games so far, and the Royals have had some good moments. I think guys like Michael Garcia, Vinny Pasquantino, Franmil Reyes have stuck out. I think the new catcher framing, raid the zone type thing setup is going well. We're going to peel back more of these layers, but good things so far. And that's, whether it's a big deal or a minor deal, that's better than the alternative.
I need you to shut up and read me how many games is that Royals going to win. 129. They're 4-1 right now in the Cactus League.
Hashtag on pace guy, Josh Keiser.
On pace for 130. I'm going to round up 130 wins in the 2023 MLB season. Your Kansas City Royals. Very excited for it. But in all seriousness, yes, you guys are both right. We're in spring training. We're all hope spring is anew. And I drink the Kool-Aid every year. I'm trying not to this year, but I just want to see progress across the board. Whatever that looks like, I'm into it. So that's basically what I want to see from this team in 2023. But baseball's back, baby. It is back, and so is my passion for this game. I love it. Can't wait for it to start.
There is a certain amount of optimism that comes around every single year for me, just because I love the game of baseball so much, and I want to believe that this team is going to be different and good. I mean, we haven't seen the playoffs since 2015 when they won the World Series, but this season, like at least in camp over these first couple of weeks, it feels different. It feels like they're building that sort of winning culture that they really need to implement now for the future. It's not just a quick fix one size fits all thing and it's just going to immediately be a winner. It's not that, but they're laying that foundation early. It's very clear that Matt Cotrero has a really good feel for that. And the guys he's been able to bring in with Paul Hoover and Zach Bove and Brian Sweeney really are getting things going and laying that solid foundation for the process with how they are going to win. Now, it may not lead to incredible results this season, but we know that at least the process is in place for what is going to lead Kansas City to being a winning ball club here in the future. But we're starting to see some of those little things actually work, at least in, a small sample through 5 games. The raid the zone stuff, as simple as telling the pitchers, hey, just throw it down the middle. Just throw strikes. Good things happen when you put the ball over the strike zone, which if that's what it takes, man, that's a massive indictment on the last regime. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it seems like whatever it is, it's working.
Kind of like catching on. It seems like it was basically like the Rays were the only ones doing that main concept, which seems so simple, but nobody was taught to do that. So it was not just the Royals were behind on that though.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just like that, sometimes the hardest things can be broken down with just a simple task, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what this seems to be. But the guys are buying in. It doesn't seem like there's any resistance to what Cotrero and company are bringing in and what they're trying to implement. And it seems to be working, at least early on. There's still a long way to go. We're going to see it in a larger sample here coming up in about a month, but early indications give me really good optimism for the progress that we can see this season. That's really, Josh, you hit on that too. I think the Royals are going to win 75 games, something like that, 75, 77 games. And if that means that they're throwing out 5 rookies or 5 young starting pitchers a night, and sure, they may get shellacked every once in a while, but we see those signs of them getting better. They're putting 7 or 8, young guys in the lineup that are 3 years or less of service time in the lineup outside of Salvador Perez, and they're getting their at-bats, they're figuring it out. That's what we need to see, because this is the year where you have to figure out and evaluate that and implement these processes that they are very key on to succeed in a small market at the big league level. Then they're going to have to figure it out. And right now, I feel pretty good about where they're at from a leadership perspective. It's the best I've felt since Ned Yost was here. And I think that they're in a really good place.
I think, and this is very not just baseball-y, it's sports in general and just life. I think like people kind of overlook, you hear different things, you hear from other people different things, stuff is reported, stuff is swirled around. Everyone, whether you're tapped in or not tapped in, knows by now the Mike Matheny clubhouse was not great, right? And not many people
really
liked.
Bad. I'll just call a spade a spade. It was terrible.
It was not a really cool story. Okay, like people didn't like coming into work. Not many people kind of got along with that vibe. Simply liking what you do and liking the people you work with and liking the people who are technically in charge of you and are trying to teach you. If you're a student and you hate your classmates, or you love your classmates, but your teacher's so bad, your principal's bad, the school sucks, you're like, why do I go? You have to do it, but you don't want to do it. If you're at a job and like you like a lot of your coworkers, you all want to accomplish a certain goal, but your team leader sucks or your manager's bad. This is a macro thing, not a micro thing. But if you just like showing up, and that's something that I don't know if it leads to 3 more wins. I don't know if it leads to 5 more wins. Like at a certain point, you also have to play and the players have to produce and the coaches have to coach. But all other things equal, if you ran everything back last year with the Royals, how many wins did they have? 67 last year? 65. If you run that back with this current regime with Q and all those guys, just all other things equal, probably win a few more games just because people
100%.
Like showing up. And I think that in and of itself, we can talk about small scale takeaways from small sample sizes. We can talk about specific players, like broad scheme, broad picture. That's something that I think people are kind of sweeping under the rug almost just because those moves have already happened.
Yeah. I was kind of the same way as far as like sweeping things under the rug. People were giving out their off-season grades these last few weeks, and everybody was like like beating them up because it's basically the same roster they're bringing back. I understand that roster won 65 games last year for the most part, but the thing that they got right seemingly are these coaching staffs, and they absolutely overturned the whole major league staff outside of the hitting. And that in and of itself is how they were supposed to approach this offseason. Whenever they fired Matheny, whenever they fired Dayton Moore, this was always going to be a rebuilding year. So they were never going to spend money to go get DeGrom or Aaron Judge. That was never on the table. You had to see what you have with this roster that you currently have and then plug holes once you figure out the strengths and the weaknesses of this roster. And you also do that by getting good coaching in here. And that's exactly what they did. I love all the reports that I've heard about, and it might be lip service, and this is me drinking the Kool-Aid, but I feel like there's just so much smoke around the improvement in communication, the everybody buying in, the track record of all these guys. All of that is adding up to hopefully success. And anybody giving the Royals a C- or below in their offseason grades needs to get out of here, because they did exactly what they needed to do in this offseason, added a great coaching staff, and I'm excited to see how many wins that does translate to.
Really, really quickly, Joel, before I kick it back to you, I'm just going to read part of an article from the KC Star that was a few days ago.
Yeah.
It's about Q. I'm just going to keep calling him Q because, the name is said a few different times. I think it's easier to call him Q. I'm just going to keep.
Everybody calls him Q from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine.
This is from Sam McDowell, who does great work, by the way. If you guys, are into baseball stuff or just sports stuff, follow him in KC. Ultimately, the players followed their leader, and Matheny's natural personality was closer to drill sergeant than camp counselor. The room absorbed that environment, and over the course of a 162-game season, the rigid culture grew exhausting. I know a takeaway from this will be a criticism of Matheny, maybe in a roundabout way, blah, blah, blah. The bigger point is that it's more about fit than ability. As one player said, I liked Mike as a person. I truly believe he had our best interest, wholeheartedly cared for guys in their careers, but his tone just wasn't right for the group we had and made it tough. So you can say Mike Matheny was cool. You can say the story was cool. You can say, that he wasn't as bad as people think. And I think that sometimes that rings true. But at the end of the day, players were like, it wasn't the fit. So
it really seems like that's kind of the general sentiment that we've gotten. And it kind of fits the way the Royals kind of were under the Dayton Moore era for a long time, as they were very rigid in how they wanted to run things. And it kind of goes back to pitching as well, because for so long, the Royals were very, very cookie cutter on how they wanted their pitchers to look, how they drafted their pitchers, what they wanted them to throw. It was like a sinker slider exclusively, and you had to be like 6'3" or taller. Like they just ran things a certain way, one size fits all. Everybody's going to do the same offseason program to get going because we want everybody to look the same. Mm-hmm. Quatrero comes in, brings in Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove, and it's individualized offseason programs. Hey, I want to go to Driveline and work on a two-seamer. Okay.
They're all for it. Yeah. They're all for it.
I can't list off the amount of guys that went to Driveline this offseason. I know Vinny did for sure. Isbell, Greinke worked there.
Yeah.
Brad Keller's working on a curveball because he hasn't been able to throw anything other than sinker slider for his entire career. You might as well try something new in a walk year, coincidentally. But they're finally going, hey, you know what? Maybe instead of having a cookie cutter one size fits all approach to having all of our pitchers do all this, maybe we try and have their best interests in mind and try and figure out the best way to help them succeed individually on the field. And maybe that will help them succeed overall in their career. What a concept. But reading that and hearing that, I still felt that even if all of, that they weren't going that far radically from where the previous regime was, I'm still thinking, man, I think they can still win 75 games. And maybe that's just the optimism in me. I said that last year. I look like an asshole all year because I was the sunshine pumper with the Kool-Aid. And this year I was like, man, people are just going to laugh at me and say the same crap. But reading that, I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to win 75 games. I just feel it. I just feel it now. That
and look at us thinking that that's success. Look at us.
Hey, sometimes you got to clear low bars to get where you want to go.
Sad, Jill.
It is sad. That's the thing. It is sad. I get it. But if we want to get there, you want to, keep, moving it up, then you got to start somewhere. And a 10-win improvement from year one, from previous year to now, that's massive. And
that'd be a huge success.
It helps. And 10 to 12 wins would be huge for all of these young guys starting to see more success at the big league level. A lot of them would be entering year 3, year 4 in the big leagues. And then you can really start to make that push with a core that you have established in a year where you're evaluating all of that. So there is a lot that goes into it. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, like all the processes that they're doing right now, it feels like they're laying solid foundation for what they want. And now it's a matter of the guys going out and executing that, or, trying to execute it and it just doesn't work. And then you cut bait, move on, and try and bring someone else that can fit that mold. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts this year when it comes to that. But we'll beat a dead horse saying it feels like the Royals are doing things the right way. At least it feels that way right now.
And that doesn't just exclusively pertain to the pitching staff.
Not at all. But that's
Hoover working with Salvi and MJ about framing mechanics and positional behind the plate is huge. We also had our boy Quadrasil, Jose Alguacil working with the infielders. I'm into it. Like, it's not just exclusively to the pitching staff here. It is also, they're trying to get everybody developed, get everybody's deficiencies into at least somewhere where they can be useful. That way their strengths can absolutely shine and their deficiencies aren't absolutely weighing them down. So just the whole staff turnover in and of itself is huge. Cannot be overstated.
Yes. So now to talk about actual baseball and what we've seen over the last week or so, it's 5 games. So there's not a ton to go off of. It's like 5 to 7 at-bats for a lot of guys. It's 3 to 4 innings. But give me one pitcher and one hitter that's kind of stood out to you at least a little bit early on and you've liked what you've seen. Josh, we'll go to you to start this one.
Well, I'm gonna take the easy one. Vinny Pasquantino.
Okay.
We all knew that he was legitimate. He came on fire, especially towards the end of the season last year, a boy. But in 7 at-bats, he's got 4 ribbies. He's got a home run. He's got a few RBI singles in there. No strikeouts, and has walked. And this is all that Vinny Pasquantino does. This is what he does. He hits RBIs. He hits home runs. He does not strike out. He walks. We just love the guy. So it's very cool to see him kind of maintain the momentum. He's becoming a household name, showing up on literally every podcast and baseball show there is out there. It seems like they've had Vinny on as a guest in the offseason. So it's really cool to see him hit the momentum and then go into we'll see what he does in the World Baseball Classic. I'm pumped to see what he does for Team Italy there. As far as pitchers go, haven't seen a whole lot of the pitching. I love that Greinke is coming on and been good, but Aroldis Chapman today was absolute nails. Just some crazy bad swings that he had today. So I was really pumped to see that. If he is any kind of a force in that bullpen becomes an absolute weapon between some of the 3 or 4 guys that they have at the back of it. So if Chapman turns into a dude, say what you want about him off the field, whatever, but if he's producing on the diamond, he's going to become an asset, a valuable trade piece towards the deadline, or maybe he endures himself with the city and becomes potentially a guy that sticks around for a year or two. So those are the 2 guys. I probably took the low-hanging fruit on both of those dudes, but they've been the loudest to me.
It's really cool to see Vinny, we believed in Vinny since 2020. That's been we were kind of the early guys on that, and to see not only his ascendance, but the way that the national media and other podcasts and people treat him, it's crazy how much expectation is on him. Even with Fangraphs, you look at the projected weighted runs created plus for first baseman. It goes Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt, Vinny Pasquantino. He is
crazy
first baseman when it comes to projected stats. Scruggs on MLB Network, when they did the 30 clubs in 30 days thing for the Royals, they were talking about Bobby Witt Jr. and all the young guys. And he's like, I think this guy could be as important, if not more important to the Royals' future than Bobby Witt Jr., talking about Vinny Pasquantino. Friend of the show, Peter Apple at Just Baseball Media, he and the Just Baseball show have done their top 10, at each position over the last couple of weeks. They just did their first baseman the other day, listed Vinny at number 8. After 70 big league games, they already think that they already have him as a top 10 first baseman in the league. They're looking at him as a potential Jordan type elite hitter in baseball, probably a top 5 first baseman, but going into next season. And it's not just, this is a really cool story. People legitimately believe Vinny is a force to be reckoned with in baseball moving forward. It's really, really cool to see.
I did some weird research over the offseason to find pitch per plate appearance last year, just to see if there's any correlation between walk rates and pitch counts per plate appearance. Vinny had the lowest pitch per plate appearance on the Royals last year somehow. He did not have a swinging strike. It was a 6.6% swinging strike rate last year.
It was a 92% zone contact or something like that.
That sounds right. Yep. But his walked just under 12%. But it blew my mind that he had the lowest per bat. He's a hunter, man. He goes up there looking for his pitch. And when he finds it, he's swinging. And I love it. I just love it. I think that's great.
Yeah. I think for pitchers, Dick Lovelady, Richard Lovelady, he's been injured. He's missed a lot of time. 3 strikeouts in 2 innings. He's allowed a pair of hits. Nothing too crazy, but I'm interested to see how he factors back into the picture there. And then hitting-wise, Maikel Garcia, man, 4 hits and 6 at-bats, including a home run. He's got 4 ribbies. This is a guy that slashed 274, 341, 463 in AAA last year, 110 weighted runs created plus. He has a little bit more pop than some people want to allow and talk about. I don't think it's crazy, but I think he has a little bit more than some people think. I think also he has a high defensive ceiling. I think the Royals think he has a high defensive ceiling. He's a good athlete. He seems to be made up of the right stuff. He had a really good winter stint and was playing really well. So I think this is a guy that he can take off and by mid-season maybe be an everyday starter for the Royals. Maybe some guy gets hurt in the infield. Maybe Hunter Dozier heats up and then gets traded, something like that. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think that it's wishful thinking on the Royals' behalf. That I think they're going to, and this is another tangent, they're going to keep playing Hunter Dozier as much as they can, hoping he pulls a Carlos Santana and plays 100%. Well enough for some team to say, we can fix him, or we can keep him afloat like the Yankees or somebody, get him out of town for it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's what they want to happen. That kind of blocks Maikel Garcia, I think. Also, Bobby Witt Jr., in a way, I guess, blocks him. And I personally think Witt's going to end up at third base. I don't think he's going to improve enough at shortstop to make the Royals take Garcia off of that spot, which is weird because that's what they're kind of doing right now. But Garcia's young. He's talented. Again, he's made up of the right stuff. Again, it's a 6 at-bat plate appearance sample size. I couldn't really care less about what he's done so far, but Joel asked me a question, and damn it, I gave him an answer.
I mean, yeah, we're going off of 6 plate appearances to make some sort of overarching take, but it's a really good point though. When that home run is, we've seen Maikel Garcia run a few out. He did between AA and AAA last year, and it's not like they're monster shots, but that ball, he almost got it over the left field bullpen today. That's not a cheapie in that park.
And Joel, it was in on his hands too.
His OPS is 1.834, so I'm just going to leave that there. And you can stew on that as much as you want.
Yeah, I mean, a $1 OPS. Good.
I can't even do that shit on the show. No. That is hard. That is freaking. And obviously, again, it's six plate appearances. But I couldn't do that over 6 plate appearances on the show on rookie. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, hey, good for him.
That's more of an indictment on me than a real life,
fair enough. Yeah,
aspiring Major League Baseball player. But
so my two, I'm gonna go with Dylan Coleman just because I think he's gross, and if they actually let him throw the sweeper breaking ball that he tinkered with last year, and it seems like the previous pitching coach didn't want him to throw it for some reason. Now the slider he threw anyways is gross, but when you pair a sweeper with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, there aren't going to be many people that are going to touch it. 5 strikeouts in 2 innings, 2 appearances. Now he's walked a couple, hit a guy. they're working the kinks out. I'm not too worried about it. I think both. And what's unfortunate is I think both of his outings were not televised, which sucks.
Yes.
But regardless, like you look at the stats, like we saw him come on the last 2 months of last season, really cut down on the walks. He had a sub-3 ERA. If Chapman closes, like I think they're going to give him the opportunity to, go ahead. But at some point during the season, I fully believe that Dylan Coleman is going to pull a Greg Holland and take over that closer role and not let it go, for the rest of the time that he's in Kansas City, because the stuff is that electric. The mentality on the mound is that, he has that closer's mentality and closer's stuff. So I'm excited to see him kind of progress. And I just want to say this before we move on, especially when it comes to pitchers. Like, I see people losing their minds because a guy got shelled in one inning. For the most part, I saw people, like, you tweeted the joke about Daniel Lynch Cy Young futures, and I was like, oh, that's great. Yeah. And I said give up a bomb and a couple runs. We were like, oh, Daniel Lynch sucks. Send him back down to AAA. And it's like,
that's the Josh Keiser effect, is what that is.
Well, I'm not. That's not. I'm just more pointing out, like, that's the ebb and flow of it, because a lot of these early outings, guys are throwing 1-2 innings, and they go in with a plan of, I'm going to, if I get ahead, I'm going to throw my slider, or if I'm down in the count, I'm just going to throw my changeup just to see if I can get it over. And they're working on these things. And if they get shelled, like, results be damned. They're just working on stuff. So you can't take away a lot of those things, a lot of the results and a lot of the bad innings, just because, you think if you think the guy sucks because you have some negative confirmation bias, like, good for you. I think you're a terrible person, but that's fine. Go ahead and
I can think of a couple people like that.
I can think of a few. So if by like the middle of March, we're still seeing some of those same things, okay, we can have a conversation. But early on, you can't take anything away from these guys' 1 inning spurts of working on stuff. Like, whatever. My hitter, the Franimal, Franmil Reyes, hit an absolute moon bomb in the first game. And we talked about it a little bit on one of our last episodes about a month ago, that there was a log jam in the outfield a little bit. It's going to work itself out. They're going to find a way to get everybody in there. It just happens to be, unfortunately, that Drew Waters has an oblique injury. He's out for about 6 weeks. So he's going to miss the first part of the season because he'll just then be ramping up. So there's an open spot in the outfield, and Franmil Reyes signed a minor league contract. I got the invite to spring training, and seems like a guy that could certainly make the opening day roster right now for this team. Rocking the number 99. I hope he goes out and hits a couple balls into the fountains, gives us something fun to watch for a little bit. He feels like the type that maybe the Royals will stash in AAA and just going to bring up whenever they need the opportunity. But hey, if he keeps hitting, man, like, if he can get back to what he was in 2020, because go look at some of his previous seasons. He was not good last year. But in, I think, 2018 through 2020, 30-plus homers every year. He just crushes baseballs. He's such a huge dude that, like, he's just a fun player to watch. From the stuff I remember from him in San Diego, he's a really fun personality. Feels like he's going to fit in that locker room really well. I hope that, maybe there's something there. It'll be really fun to have a Kyle Isbell, maybe an MJ Melendez, Franmil Reyes outfield, or you can platoon, there's a platoon situation with Edward Olivares, who just keeps hitting. That's all that guy does. And I just hope he can stay healthy, because he is a legitimate force in the lineup when he's actually there. So I think there's your 4 outfielders right there, at least as it sits.
I mean, there's plenty of flexibility there too with Eaton. He's going to obviously be in the outfield mix as well, but yeah, you've got 4 or 5 guys on the projected roster anyways for opening day. I think there's plenty of depth there that they can run with Franmil as like a primary DH even at that point.
Yeah. If you want to, especially if Prado goes down to AAA, then you can put Vinny at first, and you can make Franmil the DH.
And that was one. I was looking at all the projections, like the preseason projections. All this is like, man, I know Vinny's going to get his, MJ's going to have 20 some home runs. Bobby could be in the mix too, but there's just not very much power. It'd be great if Salvi will get
Salvi hopefully regains form, but man, like,
it'd be great to have a guy that comes in and hit dingers off the bench at any given moment potentially. I mean, and then the next day they got Franmil. Like, that's it. That'd be great.
I mean, just the thought of a 1 through 5 with MJ, Bobby, Salvi, Vinny, Franmil. I mean, those are 4 guys liable to take you bridge at any point.
The thing is also, this is in 1 year, the Royals went from like, well, shit, they don't have, they're going to put Ryan O'Hearn out there and they don't have any guys who can like reasonably take his spot for one reason or another, whether it's the Royals don't think they're ready or like they just don't have them on the roster or whatever. Now it's like, well, shit, like they have Edward Olivares, they have Drew Waters' injury was like blessing in disguise is the wrong way to put it, but in the phrase
it created some clarity.
Exactly. In the phrase of like these things work themselves out, we say that a lot on this show. They kind of do. And injuries is one of those things. Now they have Franmil Reyes, who when he's on, he rakes. And it's not Ryan O'Hearn, where like he had the 44 game sample size as a rookie. And you're like, well, okay, this guy can do something. And then he didn't do crap for years after that. He actually can do stuff and has a track record of actually doing stuff. I think Royals fans are going to like Franmil Reyes if he's 85, 90% of what he used to be. And I think Royals fans should hit the like button on this podcast. They should hit the subscribe. We're trying to grow this YouTube channel. Very excited for this season. We're going to be back routinely now that baseball is back. I'm going to try to improve on my segues and transitions as the season goes on. I'm not mid-season form yet. I'm not out of the race come August or September. Y'all. Exactly. I'm not out of the race come August. So we're working on it, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
You did a great job in my book. It was a great job.
It's a damn shame. Damn shame.
Sorry, I'm looking something up here. Okay, so Franmil Reyes, like, he's never been a guy that walks a ton. He walks like, I think it was 8.4, 8.6, 10%, 9%, and they only walked 6.3%, and he had a career high K rate last year.
Yeah.
Negative 1.1 more. So, this is a bit of a buy low situation, but his Zips projection, if he plays a full season, is 246, 305, 458, 25 homers, 1.7 WAR. Maybe there's something there. I don't know if he'll be a full season guy for the Royals, but maybe there's something there. It's
how many plate appearances is that projection?
I think it was 505.
Okay, so they're getting.
It's quite a few.
Yeah, that would be a full season for sure.
That's healthy.
I'll take it. I mean, I'm fine with that. That would be what that'd be like 105 WRC plus, which would probably be like
I think it was about 110, 112
on the team last year.
I think that was what the projection was.
If he's getting a huge amount of at bats, it's not a problem this year where that means he's not playing well. Like this year, if he's getting that many at bats, that means he's raking and effing it up. In a good way. Right. It's not like you have Hunter Dozier out there, and I hate to keep beating that dead horse, but like if Hunter Dozier has 1 billion plate appearances this year, I think at a certain point, the Royals would finally just bench him at some point and be like, dude, you're not going to play. I wouldn't bet that if he's struggling immensely, he's going to be an everyday player this year. And he might not be quite an everyday player this year anyway, but you get the premise of like, if Franmil Reyes sucks this year, the Royals are going to know it after a month and they're not going to keep playing him out there every day or even close to every day.
Yeah, I don't see that being. I think they'll run him out there at third on opening day, but if by the beginning of May he's not showing any signs of turning it around, I could definitely see that scenario. And they bring up Miguel Garcia or they throw Nate Eaton there and do what they probably should have done early on, like on opening day, if we're being real, and just said, hey, here we go. To talk a little more about spring training as a whole, we've seen the implementation of some of these new rules and things that they're trying to get going in Major League Baseball. So you have the shift rule, and then the pitch clock specifically. Have you guys had the opportunity to watch any of these spring training games, and what are your thoughts on both of those?
Go ahead, Josh.
I mean, with being on the Royals Farm Report podcast last year, I watched a lot of minor league games, and I cannot tell you how many games like I would start watching first 3 innings, had to walk away, put kids to bed or whatever, and I'd come back and it's top of the ninth after like an hour. That missing the game sucks. No, don't get me wrong. But the fact that it's that quick, that pitch clock, and it's like a 20-25 minute difference in average run time, but that is such a huge pace of play improvement that it is just a completely different game. And it's gonna get guys here in spring training. They're still getting used to it. They're getting used to it in live situations. We saw that. Was it a end the game on a batter?
Oh yeah, on the
automatic
strike. They got to tinker with that stuff, but yeah,
and
that's why it's spring training.
Absolutely, and they're going to have to get their internal clock on it and what have you. But I think for the game itself, it is very, very good. I have the attention span of a goldfish, so it is very good for me. I'm very in on the pitch clock. The bases, I don't know. They say it's for player safety. I don't really care. It's going to lead to a lot of more stolen bases, apparently, which is going to be more action, more runs. I'm into it. So I'm in on all these offense-friendly pitching changes for sure.
I am too. Like, quit being freaking boring. Quit being stuck up. Quit being an old head. Like, get with the program. People aren't watching baseball like they should be. People aren't supporting baseball like they should be. People are not speaking about baseball how they should be. People are not following baseball how they should be. Getting these changes in there, yeah, there's going to be a bit of a transition and acclimation period for like players and even for the teams and for the league as a whole. But like, if they don't work, you could always change stuff in the future. And like, I personally don't like the ghost runner rule, and they doubled down on that. We're like, it's not going anywhere, and they were doing all that stuff. Like, nothing, they can't bat 1,000, and no one can. But I think more stolen bases is good. Quicker baseball games are good. And I forget, people are complaining about, oh, people aren't bringing that up for, other stuff. Baseball is a very unique thing in that it's a problem. It's an active problem. Like for us on this podcast, it's not a problem. We'll watch baseball.
Right.
Like, even though sometimes you're like, God, this game's been going on forever. Like, it'd be great if it was like even 5% faster. Like, man, I really want to, like, if I make a list of things I did today, I don't want watch baseball to be literally it. You know what I mean? So I think it's good for the game. The players will get over it. I like the tidbit about, like, once the broadcasts are going in the regular season, you won't be able to see the little pitch clock anymore. Like, it's going to be framed a certain way. I think that's a good boost. So
I think they'll have it probably like, somewhere on there just for
they got to, right?
Sake.
Like, because it's so close knit to where, like, I don't know, but like, I'm not going to be standing up yelling at my TV, like counting down the stuff. And
right.
I think it's going to be fun. I think 15 seconds is long enough, and you get 20 right with runners on base. So I think it'll work out.
So I think the pitch clock, like in a vacuum, is a good thing. Yeah. And you can tell, like, pace of play, I mean, it was jarring at first. Like, I watched the first game that was Mariners Padres, and I had it onto my desk when I was at work, and I'm working on stuff, sent a couple emails. I look over and the inning was already over. I was like, oh geez, like I missed everything. I will say, after a couple more watches, and by the end of April, we're not going to notice the pitch clock near as much as we are right now, just because it is so unique and different. But at times it does feel fast for fast's sake. Like, I think, like the 15 and 20, I think they need to move it to like 20 and 25 just to have a little bit. And that's still going to shave 10 to 15 minutes off a game, which is what the intention of this is anyways. So just because, think about, like, pitchers, I know they're not, running around, like crazy like NBA or NFL players are, but it's still pretty physically exhausting to do this, make it, throw a ball 95 miles an hour, unnatural motion with your arm, all that stuff. And it's in, the middle of August in Kansas City, where we know it's hotter than two squirrels in a wool sock, like Ichiro likes to say. And pitchers are having to go through every 15 seconds and throw. Like, the exhaustion and the fatigue that I think would set in there, like, that just feels like too much. I think that extra 5 seconds on either end will actually end up being more beneficial to guys than just make them throw. Like, I think it'll end up being like, I think they're going to have to tinker with it, which is why I'm glad they're working on this now in spring training. But that's my only thing that I would change, is just bump the pitch clock back a hair. And then I think it's still good. I think the pace will still work just fine.
Yeah, I think, and that's definitely valid. Like another 5 seconds in both scenarios wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily. And I do think for young players, on one hand, like you don't have as much time to get in your own head and let things keep ballooning. But also on the other hand, you don't have enough time to like sit and think really that much and really get to the nitty gritty of stuff. And usually that comes in the dugout in between innings or whatever. But also, Zach Greinke is a good example last year. There were a few games where he said after the game in the locker room, like, I just needed to take a second and decompress and think and rest. And part of that's physical because he's like a billion years old. Part of it's also mental because he thinks and thinks and thinks. And some of these guys that truly care and are truly elite at what they do, I'm not saying it's going to derail a career, but like maybe you take Jackson Kowar, for example, and you're like, it could either be really, really good for a Jackson Kowar and that he can't get in his own head and get absolutely shelled and then keep getting absolutely shelled and something clicks, or it gets worse and he like doesn't want to be there and he's like, I hate this. I want to go home. I want to be done with this game. And I'm not saying that all MLB players are mentally fragile or that it would affect them necessarily, but
I know what you're saying.
I know if
though.
I was
Like,
up there, it would have some sort of impact on me. I just don't know what which good or bad it would be.
I think we will see times this year where if it's a really big pitch in a really big spot and it's a 0-2 count, 1-2 count, high leverage situation, pitchers really having to think like, man, what do I want to go here? I could see them just stepping off and taking the automatic ball. They're like, okay, it's 1-2, whatever. I needed that extra 20 seconds to think about this. Okay, now let's go. Or same situation, like, 2 runners on, 2 outs, bottom of the 8th, and a batter's, it's a 2-0 count. And he really is like, okay, I don't want to get too over aggressive here. All right, I'll just take the automatic strike. Okay, 2-1, let's go. I think that teams will end up being a little more strategic with it, and certain players that are confident in their ability will be a little more strategic with it and go, okay, like I don't mind taking that extra strike because 2-0 versus 2-1, for a lot of guys, it doesn't change the situation for them. It may change what the pitcher's going to do though. So then there's that kind of psychological change as well on the opposite end. So
and that was something I think everybody thought that a guy like Max Scherzer was going to lose his mind the first time he gets called for a pitch clock violation. He came out in the press conference yesterday saying he is thinking of it like he is going to use it to his advantage because the batter has to be ready for at the 8-second mark, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's going to use every one of those seconds to use like psychological warfare on that hitter, which I always love Max Scherzer.
I love Max Scherzer.
The fact that
he's so cool.
Silver lining this whole situation when everybody was like, he is going to lose his mind the first time he gets it. I love it. It just makes me love Scherzer even more. So I think the guys are kind of seeing the upside to this, both in game, for the game, and of the game. I don't think that makes sense, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the shift, there's going to be teams that are still going to do something. Like there are teams that are going to move their left fielder in and basically be that rover spot and run 2 outfielders. Like I know the Rays are going to do that crap like immediately. So I'm curious how often teams do it. It's still going to happen. You're still going to see shifted players. Like it's inevitable. But they're trying, as much as MLB wants to try and rein it in, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing with just baseball players have tried, bending the rules and trying to find little things to cheat, get away with whatever for so long that they're going to find ways around this and loopholes to try and make this work that it's still going to happen. So getting rid of the shift entirely is not going to happen. It's just a matter of how teams are going to find ways to implement it to still take away hits.
Yep.
I didn't even notice the bigger bases, if we're being honest.
Have you seen the meme?
Yes.
Where it's like, here's the base. Here's the base. This. I'm like, it's really, I did not notice either.
I didn't notice now when I go, I'm actually going to opening day with my dad. And I know that when I go, I love to sit and watch the field get prepped before, like, right after BP, and they lay the bases down. I'm going to notice it then because I've watched the same 15 by 15 base for, as long as I've been watching baseball since I was 2 years old. So that's going to be a little different. But again, it's kind of like the pitch clock, kind of like anything else. By the end of April, we're not going to notice it. And it's just going to be another thing on the field.
Do they still do the Sunday, like, kid day at the K where you can
Kids
run the bases afterwards
I
or whatever?
think so, yeah.
Joel,
Yep.
you should go do that and then investigate
base?
how big those. But yeah, steal a base literally, or be like, hey, this is my analysis. #analytics on the new base. Or I felt it was this much faster. Time yourself and then go run it like a high school field or something. Or that's a bad comparison. I don't know.
I'm
It's
not
90
running.
feet.
I'm too out of shape for that. I got run around upstairs in the living room with my 2-year-old, and I'm like, nah, dude. But I very easily can convince my 2-year-old to go and run around Kauffman Stadium.
Oh, for sure.
That won't take much convincing.
I had to go look. I wanted to see what Vinny Pasquantino's projected stolen bases.
Don't tell me. Joel, give a guess.
2.
I'm going to guess 4.
Okay, so let's set the over-under. It's 2 on Zips.
Oof.
Set the over-under 2.5. Let's say 2.5.
Over.
You guys, with these big pizza box bases, and
I think he gets 3, and all of them are the backside of a double steal.
I'd give him 3. Yeah.
I was curious about.
What do you think?
That's my only addition there.
Hold on a second. I want to. How many players were named Billy in baseball history? Good Lord. Okay. Live lookup. What is Billy Butler's career high in stolen bases in a regular season? He did it twice.
4.
In 2010 and 2011. Sorry, 2011, 2012. Joel, what do you think?
4.
Okay. Josh?
I was going to say 3.
It was 2. He had stolen base totals of 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0.
I think Vinny can hit that over pretty easily.
Yeah. I'm with that. And obviously Vinny runs faster than Billy Butler did. That was a bad comp. I was just curious. A little trivia.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have any final thoughts here tonight before we wrap this up? Let's just make it a tradition to have one random topic at the end of this thing, just non-baseball related, just to get us through.
I had a baseball one.
Yeah, I got one more base one too.
Okay, let's do one baseball and then we'll hit a non-baseball one after. Let's go.
Jordan, you go first.
It's spring training, guys. It's 5 games or 6 by the time you're listening to this, or 7 or 8 or whatever it is. If you are stressed out or actively pounding the table for something, or actively flipping the table over for something, or screaming, or sending angry tweets, it's March. You're listening to this on March 1st or March 2nd or March 3rd, whenever it is, stop. It's not that deep. It is spring training. It is early in spring training. The Royals have too many new things going on. They have too much of a long-term view for you to be that pissed off that Hunter Dozier got the start at third base, and then they redid the lineup, and he was not one of the people that got yanked out of it. And then, they trotted out Jackson Coar again, and then Jordan Lyles has more innings than Daniel Lynch, or any of that stuff, until there's a fundamental in regular season red flag thing that's popping up, and you're holy crap, this needs to be changed. The Royals are throwing it and blowing it. Calm down. It's not that deep. It's spring training. I know that as humans and baseball fans, and if you're listening, Royals fans, people like to have that undying emotion, good and bad, for the team. But just relax, take a breath, relax. Everything maybe isn't going to be okay, but you can't predict whether it is or not. And the Royals aren't going to win 90 games this year. I'm sorry to let you know that, but they could win 75 and still have, I don't really believe in moral victories a ton, but have a lot of moral victories this season. So I've seen some negative tweets. That is my final tangent of the show. Chill out, take a breath.
Slow your roll.
For everything. Slow your roll, and that applies to everything. Know your role, shut your mouth, or at least when you open it, be a bit more calm and reasonable. I don't know why I'm even pitching this, because it's just going to make people more pissed off. Josh, I'm pitching it to you.
I threw 17 tomatoes at your face just now, and you don't even know it.
I can
it's
edit
great.
that in the video.
Okay, yeah, do that. I also cannot believe you hit the know your rules, shut your mouth, and not hit the jabroni. That is a huge
I
L
didn't want to
for
act
Jordan.
like I was ripping the guy off or anything.
Well, I mean, it's KC. We're big Chiefs fans, obviously, except for the guy who messed up who fumbled the quote there. No big deal. Rams suck.
But hey, at least you got that
Anyways.
first round pick to look forward to, right?
It's always worth the ring in retrospect. The Royals,
Okay.
hey, I'm just saying, no one's complaining that the Royals, well, actually they are, because they're saying, oh, the Royals won the World Series, I have to get back, even though that was like a huge outlier, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Flags fly forever.
Cover that.
It's all good. Josh,
Flags fly forever.
Yeah. The main thing I to quote Pat McAfee show, Nick Lofton is jocked. Seeing him on the screen, I was like, that is Nick Lofton. And I had to go back and look up what his weight was last year. Yeah. He was apparently, according to Baseball Reference, 6'1", 180. His comp seems like the last 2 seasons has been Whit Merrifield, who was 6'1", 195 or something like that, I think. And I never really thought, the body types were the same because Nick Lofton wasn't that big. 20 pounds of muscle, and boy, he shows it, man. He is absolutely jacked. Way different body type, and immediately drops dick and goes home run. I was leery about it, cautiously optimistic about Nick Lofton, and I am all the way in on Nick Lofton right now.
Oh yeah, huge Nick Lofton guys here. I think he's going to be really good. I'm excited to see whenever he
to potentially center field type body type to hot corner.
Probably, or you could factor in at third base. I think there's a lot of scenarios where he could factor in, but he's making his debut this year for sure, unless something goes horribly wrong. But I think Nick Lofton is going to factor into the 2023 team at some point. I don't know if I necessarily have any Royals final thoughts here. I think I'm just happy that I'm watching baseball consistently.
Mm-hmm.
There's, games on every day. The World Baseball Classic is coming up next week, which is going to be awesome. A lot of represented in there. Vinny and Nicky playing for Team Italy. Bobby and Brady playing for Team USA. Ronald Bolaños is on Cuba. Carlos Hernandez and Salvi are on Venezuela. And I'm forgetting somebody, but regardless, there's a lot of Royals represented, so it's going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
My non-baseball final thought here. What is your favorite non-sports podcast? What's your go-to non-sports podcast right
now? I don't have one. I'm so sorry. I am the world's worst podcast listener. I subscribe to probably 30 shows, and I can probably count on one hand the amount of not just shows, but episodes I've listened to in the past month. I work from home. I drive a lot. I have some long drives, and I still just cannot force myself to listen, and it's entirely a me problem, and I'm working on it. By the time we talk next week, I will have at least 2, not just episodes, 2 different shows that I listen to. You have my word.
Okay. Like it. I could give out 2 shout outs actually. First one is probably Armchair Expert. I love me some Dax Shepard, and usually kind of cherry pick the good guests, but they just had Paul Rudd on last week,
nice.
And I'm a big Paul Rudd guy. So shout out to Dax Shepard and the Armchair Expert. The other one is How Did This Get Made? And it's Paul Scheer, June Diane Raphael, and Jason Mantzoukas, 3 comedic actors, improv stars, but they go through awful movies and they just absolutely rip it to shreds. Just find out all kinds of some of them they really like because they're so bad. Like the Fast and the Furious, they love it, and I do too for the same reasons. But it's just very, very funny. They have a great rapport, very funny grouping there. They always usually have a special guest that's a comedian that's usually very funny as well. So How Did This Get Made? Also one of my favorite non-sports podcasts.
My favorite right now is one called Are You Garbage? And it's these 2 just bum guys from Philly. They're 2 comedians, but they just sit around and they actually interview comedians. They basically go through their full life story to find out did they grow up kind of like classy, or are they just white trash like the rest of us? And so it's just that, or like when they get together, like they have a Patreon, they take subscriber questions of just like white trash garbage stuff that they did. And like, is it garbage if I do this? So they just, it's just really funny and a mindless listen. It's like, you know, like a stressful work day or whatever, and I'm listening to sports talk radio, like that's fine. But occasionally I just want to laugh at some stupid stuff. And this constitutes that. So if you need something mindless like that, check out Are You Garbage? It's really funny. They also do stand-up, like they do like a stand-up comedy tour as well, where you can actually like watch them do this live. It's actually pretty cool. But I think that's going to do it for One Royal Way this week. We will be back next week, weekly from now on, as we are now into the season. So we'll have more to talk about next week with the WBC getting going. We'll have a bigger sample of spring training games, lots to talk about. We're so excited. For Jordan Foote, Josh Keiser, I'm Joel Penfield. We'll catch y'all next week.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.